Chums, I hope you're all keeping well and fine and dandy and all that sort of stuff, whatever you're doing. As ever, do take care of yourselves and welcome one and all brand new subscribers. You know, the latest news over here is simply this, and it's absolutely devastating for so many people, because the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, that's right, Rachel Reeves, remember her? Rachel from accounts, who can't seem to remember exactly how long she's worked anywhere, but apparently we're supposed to trust this woman with the country's figures. Think about that for a moment. If this woman can't work out her own CV, where does that truly leave the rest of us? Do you get the picture? Well, here's where it gets fascinating in itself, because now she's decided that they're going to be scrutinising literally anybody who's on disability allowance or unemployment benefit, seemingly to see whether they're actually fit, correct and ready for work. And part of that scheme, as ever, allegedly, is going to be going through their CV to see exactly how accurate it is, and more importantly, what they could do job-wise. Imagine if somebody went through Rachel's CV. Right, you see how this works. Two-tier Keir, right? Now this man, remember him, Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary that went missing in action. Well, here's what's next. As ever, let me explain. It does make you laugh, doesn't it? Because for those of us of a certain vintage, and there are many of us who watch this show, you remember, chums, going for an interview and you had to provide 2 written references. Do you remember that? And you had to have them either on you or they would write off for them. And then sometimes they would ring up that person in front of you to see if this was a genuine reference. And you held your breath, didn't you, wondering whether that person would say nice things or bad things, you know? Everything hindered on that, right? Let's not forget. Different world we live in now, of course, because this man, Jonathan Reynolds, literally lied to the House of Parliament, the Commons, etc., basically claiming he'd worked as a solicitor. Fictitious tissue of lies, completely 100%, and now he's in.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on a point of order. It has come to my attention that in a speech I gave on the 28th of April 2014, recorded in column 614 of Hansard on the subject of high-speed rail, I made a reference to my experience of using our local transport system in Greater Manchester when I worked as a solicitor in Manchester city centre. I should have made clear that specifically, Madam Deputy Speaker, that was a reference at the time to being a trainee solicitor. This was an inadvertent error, and although this speech was over a decade ago, as it has been brought to my attention, I would like to formally correct the record, and I seek your advice on doing so.
I thank the Right Honourable Member for giving advance notice of his point of order and for placing his correction on the record.
Now, well, here's where it gets interesting, because he's now corrected this, apparently, to Parliament. No, you haven't corrected it, Mr. Reynolds. You were caught lying. You continue to keep spouting that lie until you were caught out. It's as simple as that. So what happened? Well, apparently, according to a well-placed source behind that famous black door in 10 Downing Street, Jonathan literally burst into tears and was inconsolable in front of the current British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and basically said, you know, he would do anything, he was desperate to keep the job, etc. And this carried on apparently with Angela Rayner, another one that can't seem to remember her own CV or indeed achievements. But you know, this is the current government right now, literally littered with lies. But as I said at the start of the video, they're coming for you. Now here's the next bit, which is absolutely fascinating with Jonathan Reynolds in itself, because apparently Sir Keir Starmer decided that he would carry on working with Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, the business minister, simply because he was the best man for the job. So how bad were the rest? You've had 14 years to find somebody to have some clout, some energy, and basically some integrity and truthfulness. And Jonathan is literally the best that you could find. Now, as you can imagine, this is a government starting to crumble on all angles, despite the fallout of another party, Reform. But where it gets interesting is when they come to check you, quite frankly, if I was in your shoes, I would say, well, when Rachel gets her CV right, when Jonathan stops lying and Angela can remember exactly how long she worked in social care, perhaps we could talk. Trust me, this is going to be a case of absolute civil unrest, seemingly because when you've got liars at the top, then you're going to have liars at the bottom. And it depends who wins and fights hardest. Anybody else agree? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.